I'm Clive Rossfield, brother and shield of Joshua, and you're watching Primalliquid.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Primalliquid, and as you all know, I was lucky enough to be invited to the second media tour event for Final Fantasy XVI. And of course, this was entirely different to the first event. So, because of that, we are going to do a second first impressions. Now, obviously, the very first one I did a few months ago was related pretty much solely to the combat. This time, however, it's going to be a little bit different. You see, this time we had access to, well, we had pretty much unrestrained access to the full game. So we got to experience the entire start of the game as well. And so we are able to talk about quite a lot more than just the combat and the way the game looks this time. So let's jump into it, shall we? Okay, so firstly, unfortunately, I can't show everything I really want to. We were not allowed to capture at this event either, and instead we were provided footage by Square Enix to use for the media event. Now, in terms of what this entails, okay, the gameplay that we got to experience was essentially the whole game, basically. We could start at the very start of the game and go through, and then we also had access to, you know, the free roaming on some areas and all stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to touch on those sorts of things for this, just because I'm going to make that into its own little video as well. So for now, we're just going to talk about first impressions from the very start. Okay, now be warned, there may or may not be some kind of spoilery things. We will be talking about a few new features which, you know, they have been sort of shown in trailers, but I'm going to give a little bit more details on them. And then likewise, we are going to talk about some scenes that you do see in trailers, only with a little bit more context. Okay, however, I will save all of that stuff for later on, so don't worry, this is entirely spoiler free for now. Once we get to that point, I will talk a little bit more about it. So to start with, we end up actually starting off with the tutorial. Now, this tutorial starts off with middle-aged Clive running around the battlefield for your movement tutorial and your camera tutorial. This is actually really cool, okay? Because even though it's a tutorial, you have Titan and Shiva fighting in the background. So this is essentially the scene from pretty much like most of the trailers. In fact, I think it was also in the very first trailer, this one was. But yeah, so this is where the tutorial actually starts taking place. And as you're moving through the landscape, you've got Titan and Shiva fighting and just destroying the area around you. And it looks amazing. During this, I actually stopped on the edge of a cliff and I just looked over, and you can actually see Shiva and Titan fighting in real time. It looks amazing. Okay, like seriously, it is actually just incredibly amazing looking. I cannot stress that enough. It is so intense. You know, you see that and you're just like, oh my god, this is the first 10 seconds of the game. What are we in for? You know, it is honestly great. After a little movement tour, you do end up with a flashback to Clive's youth. Now, during this flashback, this is exactly what we've seen in trailers. In fact, pretty much the entirety of Clive's youth has actually been in trailers. There are a few, more scenes given a little bit extra detail, a little bit more background and stuff like that. But for the most part, it has been shown in trailers. So you have the whole training session in the pig pen. You know, that's where you learn all the basics about combat and stuff like that, where you've got Joshua and Jill sitting on the side watching you. So that is basically how you learn the combat at first. Once that's done, we are introduced to, you know, Joshua's mother and all that sort of stuff and a few other characters. And then we have a little bit of free roam around the village. Now, the free roam around the village is kind of cool, but also kind of disappointing. Okay, you've got to think, we are essentially in a kingdom. Yeah, we're in a kingdom, but unfortunately the village is rather lackluster. It's rather lacking. Obviously, it makes sense to be in terms of a development plan because, you know, it's an area that does sort of get destroyed. We're not going to be there all that long. So it makes sense not to make the place absolutely ginormous when you're only going to be there for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So I can understand that, but also a part of me is slightly annoyed at, I mean, it's a kingdom. It's a kingdom, and we get like 2 tiny little screens for it, which is kind of disappointing. But again, you know, why have resources devoted to that when we're only going to be there for 2 minutes? I definitely would much rather have those resources and the time spent in other parts of the game that we are going to be at a lot more often. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the area is bad. Okay, I'm just saying the area is short. So once the combat tutorial is over, you can have free reign over the, I'm just going to call it a village, okay? I'm literally just going to call it a village. You have free roam over that. Now, there are a few items that you can grab, you know, a few little collectibles and whatnot. And, well, when I say collectibles, I don't mean actual, like, collectibles. I mean, like, potions, basically. So you can pick up a few of them, and you can, you know, have a look around the village. You can see the NPCs. You can listen to their conversations. And you can get a little bit of backstory about, you know, some of the characters, and just all things like that. But the main point, really, for this village is essentially another tutorial. You've got the combat tutorial, and then you've also got the tutorial for how to find out where you need to go. Once you've done that, you have a small conversation with Clive's father, and then you are off into the marsh. Now, the marsh is in the trailers where Clive fights the Marble. Now, the Marble itself is kind of straightforward, to be honest, but that's not all this area has to offer. So this is your first real look at exploration. But also it's not. So it's not an open field exploration, this area isn't. It is a little bit of a runway, but that's because we are basically heading somewhere. We're looking for something, essentially. So that's why it's done rather than being, you know, a big open area like you can experience later. Plus, it's still a tutorial, so it doesn't want you getting lost. So going through this area, you will fight some goblins, a hobgoblin, and then a marble at the end. Along the way, you can find interactable environments, you can find items, treasure chests, and of course, you can fight random battles. So this is just to allow you to get familiar with the combat and fighting multiple enemies at once, and then it finishes off with a nice boss battle against the Marble. The Marble is essentially just going to teach you, okay, you need to learn to dodge. Because if you just take every hit from that Marble, you're going to die, basically. But the fight itself is still kind of short. You know, it's only the first boss. It's like a tutorial boss, essentially. So you can enjoy that, you can experience that, and just have your way with things, basically. Now, with that said, okay, that is, to me, essentially the end of the tutorial section. Okay, that is basically where the tutorial sort of ends. You've had your movement tutorial, you've had your camera tutorial, you've had your combat tutorial, and you've had your tutorial on some of the other features like your sense and stuff like that to figure out where to go. So that to me is the end of the tutorial. Now, in terms of what I rank the tutorial as, it is definitely well done. It is not slow, but it's not too fast. Like the actual prompts and that for you to learn what to do are quick, precise, and to the point, so you can very easily grasp all the features that the game offers. And it's also done in an exciting way. Okay, it's not just a case of, you know, you're stuck in a room and you're told to look at this post over here and you're told to look at that post over there, like a lot of other games do. Instead, it is a fully interactive tutorial, and it makes sense in the way it was done. It was actually really, really well integrated with the actual story itself, rather than, you know, the messy, we're in a room, learn how to move, learn how to use the camera, and then move on. You know, they integrated it into the story really quite well, to be honest, which is definitely nice to see. From this point on, okay, we are going to talk about some story from the first hour to 2 hours of the game. Now, when I say the story, okay, I'm just giving you a heads up here. a lot of what we are going to talk about has been shown in trailers, but again, trailers have no context. So what you see in trailers could be entirely different, and in some cases will be entirely different as to what we are actually going to talk about. Okay, so fair warning, this bit may contain spoilers. However, I will try my hardest to keep them to a bare minimum. And again, this is only going to be for the first, I mean, depending on how quick you are in the game, the first hour to 2 hours. Okay, so with that said, spoiler warning is in effect. I'll give you 10 seconds to click off the video. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, you've had 10 seconds. Spoiler warning is over. If you get spoiled now, it is your own fault. So let's talk about some of the key moments. So firstly, we know, Joshua and Clive, their mother hates Clive. Okay, their mother absolutely hates Clive. And honestly, in the very start of the game, that really comes across. You can see it in the facial animations, the way she speaks to him, the sounding of the voice. You can easily tell there is a lot of just pure detest there, just pure hate, pure detest. She is not interested in Clive whatsoever. In fact, she hates him. She hates his guts. And then with Joshua, I mean, Joshua's the apple of her eye, Joshua's the amazing one. She loves Joshua. She does not want anything to happen with Joshua, and she babies him. Okay, and then when Clive is sent to the marsh, the king, Clive's father and Joshua's father, ends up giving Clive a mission to basically go and look for the marsh because there's some problems and all that. That's what sends Clive over to the marsh, and then they have to send Joshua over to the Phoenix Gate, and obviously the king goes with him as well. This is for the right, because Joshua is the Phoenix. It has to be done. Like, their family's always done this, but the mother doesn't like it because she babies Joshua, and obviously Joshua is quite sickly, so she's very concerned about Joshua. Father basically just says, nah, screw you, woman. We've always done this. We're still carrying it on. Let's go. So she sort of gets disregarded there. And I should say as well, Clive's father is actually a good father figure to Clive, okay? In fact, he actually doesn't even like the mother all that much. He hates the way she treats Clive. That's why Clive is sent on these missions, to prove himself, to prove his worth, because every time Clive succeeds, she hates it, basically. So every mission Clive goes on and succeeds, it's basically a kick in the balls to the mother. And the father is he is so happy to allow this to happen. Basically, he encourages this to happen. Honestly, it's like some real Jerry Springer shit right here, okay? It's honestly amazing. You're gonna laugh a lot in the first 15 minutes of the interaction there. But then after that, we get to Phoenix Gate. Now, this is the place where in the trailers gets destroyed by Ifrit and Phoenix. Okay, this is where Joshua transforms and all of that. So again, spoiler warnings, I'm going to be adding more context here. Now at this point, we actually get to play as Joshua. Now, playing as Joshua is something I never expected personally. I honestly thought we would just only play as Clive all throughout. However, that is not the case. Now, Joshua, it's done in an interesting way. Okay, so Joshua himself is quite sickly, and that translates into controlling him. He is slow, he can swing a sword, but again, it is clunky. He is not being trained in swordsmanship, and that really shows in how you control him. But because of his sickly nature, again, he is slow to move around the area. His actual physical combat abilities are freaking terrible. Okay, however, what really shines with Joshua is his magical ability. His magic is incredibly strong, because obviously he is the dominant of Phoenix and he can channel into Phoenix's power. But again, still a little slow. Okay, and that's probably my biggest negative with Joshua, to be honest, just that he is a little slow. But again, there's a story reason for that. He is sickly. You know, if you were incredibly sick, would you be running around jumping everywhere and slashing everything with a sword? No, of course you wouldn't. So it's a nice little attention to detail that they've added there, instead of, you know, just copying Clive. You know, like copying Clive's coding for movement and fighting and all that. They completely did this from scratch, which is really a really nice touch for sure. But while the Phoenix Gate is being attacked, you are going to be fighting some soldiers with Joshua. So you're gonna mostly use magic for these, basically. You know, you're gonna burn everything to the ground, basically. But then, as you are going through, okay, as you are going through, Joshua will reunite with his father. And then this is where the father gets killed, basically, where Joshua's got all the blood all over him, and this is what really causes Joshua to lose control and transform into the Phoenix. You got to think, Joshua is not a fighter. He's not a warrior. You know, he's been babied his whole life. He's always been in the castle, treated with respect and all that. So for him to be in the middle of a battlefield, obviously that is very stressful. But then to see your father murdered right in front of you, to be covered in your father's blood, he loses control and transforms into the Phoenix. And then this is where Ifrit comes into play, basically. Clive does sort of appear around this time as well, and Clive fights one of the Dragoons. However, while Clive is fighting the Dragoon, we take control in an Ifrit v Phoenix fight. However, unlike the previous combat demo that media got to play, you do not control Ifrit in this fight. Instead, you control Phoenix. Yes, you get to control Phoenix fighting Ifrit, and it is crazy good, okay? It reminds me a lot of the old sort of like side-scroller shooting games. Remember things like Panzer Dragoon from back in the day? I know all you young'uns won't even have a clue what I'm on about. Just like YouTube Panzer Dragoon or something like that after this video, and you'll see what I mean, basically. But this has also been shown in the Icon trailer as well, where you can see sort of Phoenix flying backwards, and you are shooting like magic at Ifrit. This is that fight, okay? So you are controlling Phoenix fighting Ifrit, and it looks freaking crazy. Yes, it is sort of on wheels where you can only really move up, down, left, and right, and that's to dodge Ifrit's attacks. Ifrit also doesn't attack all that often, so there's pretty much zero chance of a game over here, but there is a chance for a game over at least. You know, I mean, if you take every hit, you will eventually game over, but for the most part, it's on wheels. This is your introduction to controlling icons, basically, and it is crazy good. Okay, so within like the first hour, the first 2 hours, you get everything. You get combat, you get story, you get gore, you get family feuds, you get icon battles, you get the story being set up. You know, that's the big one. You get the story being set up, and it's not slow. It is not slow. Trust me on that. It's also not 0 to 60, okay? It's kind of hard to explain how it's laid out, but you essentially go from slightly slow interpretations of sort of what's going on. You get a little bit of backstory about, you know, the war and what's going on, all that sort of stuff, all the fights, and then things just hit the fan, basically, you know? But it's done in such a way that you can grasp everything, but it's fast enough to really keep you focused and keep you interested. At no point during the first 2 hours, because yes, everything I've just explained took me about 2 hours to get through, okay? That is including cutscenes, that is including the tutorials, but also that is including lots of bits where I'm just sort of standing around, looking at the environment, looking around the areas for items and stuff like that. So if you were to just rush through, you could very easily do all of this within an hour, to be honest. It's really not that long per se, but because I was looking for everything and I was really taking in the scenery, enjoying the music, it was great. Okay, it was great. And you know what? End of spoilers. So what we're going to talk about now is the music. So obviously during the first combat demo, I did talk about this very briefly, how the music is captivating and all that. Oh my god. We had not even seen anything in that combat media tour. Honestly, like the music is amazing. Literally from as soon as you hit new game, it's banger after banger after banger. Honestly, like, it's so good. It is so freaking good. It sets the mood extremely well. It's tense when it needs to be. It's impactful when it needs to be. It's emotional when it needs to be. It's slow when it needs to be. Oh, honestly, it's so hard to put into words. It is so hard to put into words just how good the music actually is. Okay, this is, look, there's a reason. Okay, there is a reason the OST for this game is 8 discs long. There is a reason for that. And normally I am not a fan of every track in an FF game. I will freely admit that. Some games I like more than others. Some games I only like a few songs. 16 so far, I've listened to, I don't even know how many different songs. I wasn't counting them or anything like that, but there was definitely a good few different ones. And not once did I think the music was lacking, or that it should be changed in any way, or that it came across slightly unfitting or a little weird for the scene, or it didn't build the scene up like it should. Not once did I ever think about that. Okay, it was literally amazing. This is probably going to contain a lot of my new favorite soundtracks. Okay, now to give you guys perspective on what I like music wise from the series, I probably like about 20% of the music in 14. When it comes to, you know, my favorite track in that, it's probably going to be You're Not Alone from FF9, Sutika Dinar from FF10, you know, stuff like that. Eyes on Me from FF8, for example, Man with a Machine Gun. Those are incredibly good music tracks to me. For me to turn around and say this game is going to have some of my absolute favorite OST tracks, I think is a really good compliment that the game deserves, because it honestly was that enjoyable. But I'm starting to get off on a little tangent here, aren't I? So let's just talk about the general first impressions then. Honestly, I've said this since the combat media tour, but now I am not even more confident. I am pretty much assured that, in my opinion, this is going to be game of the year. I honestly 100% think this is going to be game of the year. Now, on a combat front alone, this is easily in my top 3 favorite FFs. In fact, I would even go so far as to say it is my favorite. It is the most engaging and the most fun combat FF has been. Yes, I know a lot of people prefer turn-based, but turn-based isn't that engaging, really, when you can just sit there for 10 minutes and think about what you're going to do. With 16, you don't have that, you know? You don't have that at all. It's more engaging, it's more fast-paced, it's more fun. That is a big one. It's more fun. So combat, it is definitely going to be my favorite FF game for sure. Like, I'm not even going to debate that. In terms of exploration, it does really well. It's not completely open world. We do still have to use a map to travel between locations, but that's not too bad, because the areas that we do go to are, you know, they're decent size. There's a lot of areas to move around on. I think the best way to describe it is probably like the last Star Ocean game. Oh, what was that called? I can't remember the name of the last Star Ocean, but it's like the last Star Ocean. Big open areas. You've got, you know, lots of things to do in those areas. You've got quests, you've got collectibles, you've got all the fights and stuff like that. So there's a lot to do in there. The areas aren't just empty like 15 was. So there's been a lot of attention to detail applied there. You've got chocobos to help you get around faster and all that sort of stuff. Then if you want to go to another location, you use a map for fast travel, basically. So I actually quite enjoy that. It is really a fun system. It's not my favorite system. I do definitely prefer the world map system where, you know, you have complete control to walk everywhere on the world. That is my usual go-to system. So it's not my favorite, but it is still enjoyable. You know, I don't have any problems with the way it's done in this game. The music, I mean, I've already said about the music. Okay, the music is phenomenal. It is crazy good. Will it have a new #1 favorite track for me? I don't know. That we are going to have to see for. Okay, but at the very least, I know for a fact it is going to have some tracks that become my top 5. There is going to be some that get added to my top 5 for sure, just from what I've heard already. And let's just say I cannot wait for all of the music to appear on Spotify, because there's going to be a lot added to my Spotify playlist for sure. In terms of graphics, graphically the game is beautiful. Honestly, it's really taking advantage of the PS5's performance and power here. Graphically, the game is beautiful. Whether you're in a dark castle or you're in a lush green forest, there is no compromise on attention to detail with the graphics. You can see all the foliage in the forests. You can see the destruction on ruined castles. You know, you've got fires burning. You've got flags just slightly singed because of the fire. There is so much attention to detail added in this game. It is honestly crazy. And that again is why I think this is going to be Game of the Year. That is my honest opinion. Okay, this will be Game of the Year as far as I'm concerned. But of course, everybody is entitled to their own opinions. So just because I think it's going to be Game of the Year doesn't mean that you will. Just because I like the game doesn't mean you will again. That's fine. We all enjoy different games. But for me, it's up there. It's really up there. And I can already tell from what I've experienced, because you've got to think I've played more than I've talked about in this video, because I don't want to spoil anything, you know what I mean? But for me, this is most definitely going to be at least in my top 3 favorite FF games. That's what I'm saying. It is hands down going to be one of my top 3 favorite FF games. Now, obviously, we've not experienced the whole game, so maybe things get a little bit worse later on. I don't know. But for now, just based on what I have experienced, if the game continues in the direction that, you know, it was doing and that I think it's going to, then yes, for me, it's going to be a top 3 FF game. That is how excited I am for this game. But I pass the question on to you guys. Are you looking forward to it? Are you not looking forward to it? It's like, I want to know your reasons down below, because that is going to be it for this video, everybody. Still, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to smash that like button, and again, drop a comment down below. And of course, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more 16 content. As always, though, everybody, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.